everybody, it is Nicole from iiKiui and welcome to another review video. Today we are going to be reviewing the Arteza watercolor books. It comes in a 2-pack and I've been using this one for a while just to test it out and let you guys know the best results. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So here is the notebook. It retails for $18.99 for 2, so it's about $9.50 per book. This one is the one that I haven't used yet, but later I will show you the one that I have been using. It is an 8.3 inch by 5.1 inch notebook, and the thickness is about ½ inch. It comes with 76 pages, and you can use both sides. One is a texture side and one is a smooth side. As you can see, the cover is a hardcover, and let me get this off for you. It has this cloth-like texture on it, but it is hardcover. When you turn to the inside, there is a contact section, and then you start with the paper. It also comes with a bookmark that you can use, and it is pretty thick for a bookmark. And on the back, there is a clear file folder pocket. The paper is cold press and it is two-sided, so one side is smooth, which is the side, and the other side is textured. I'm not sure if the camera catches it, but this is the textured side and then this is the smooth side. As you can see, it lays flat, but this is only on an open seam. Here you'll see you need to press it down a little bit to make it lay flat, but it's not too difficult, and others can lay flat as well. So here's the notebook that I've been using for a little bit. As you can see, I personalized it a little bit with a rabbit sticker. And then on here, I just put my contact and a little rabbit sticker as well. And I skipped the first page just because that's what I do. And here is where I started drawing. And I did a couple drawings to test out the paper with different materials to see if it bled through and how it holds to watercolors, watercolor pens, all that stuff. So this side is the texture side, and on this side I used a zebra brush pen and the Tombow Fude brush pen just to test it out. And you can kind of see in the light it's a different color, but it's only because I have different pens, so I think it's just a different color. But if you look at it flat on, I don't think you can tell the difference. On this side, I used the Winsor & Newton watercolor marker, and I used the red one. So you can kind of see that it doesn't really blend very well. For watercolor markers, I've noticed that they don't really blend as well as they could because they tend to dry, and I think it's because the paper is absorbent that it tends to soak in that color before you can even apply water to it. So you can kind of see the streaks that I've used, and then I went over it again to make shadows, and it's a pretty solid line. And then on here you can see that I used the Winsor & Newton watercolor marker, zebra brush pen, and Tombow Fude hard tip. So this side is the smooth side, and this is where I started noticing something different. So on the smooth side, when I was drawing in pencil, it was really hard to erase on. The eraser would catch all the fibers of the paper, and then it would clump up on the eraser, and then when you're erasing, it would just smear it all over. I'm assuming it's because the smooth side has this kind of texture to it, not as textured as the watercolor textured side, but it's not completely smooth like Bristol board, so it has a kind of film over it where the eraser picked it up and it was really hard to erase. So this took a lot of effort, and if you look really closely, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's very textured and almost worn down, especially by the neck and face area, which is where I erased the most. And on this side I used Artline fine liners, zebra brush pens, Stabilo fine liner, which is the green, Sakura jelly roll, which is white for the eye, and a zebra mild liner for the inside of the leaves. Now on this side is another textured side, and normally for the layout it's both smooth and both textured, but because it's the beginning, it's a weird layout just because they're putting all the different sheets together. So on this side I tested out watercolors, just plain watercolors, the Sakura Koi watercolors that I've used so often. And I just drew a pony because why not? And it held up pretty well, except for if you were to layer it when it's wet, because the paper would start to rip off. But that's also would happen if you did it to normal watercolor paper too. So I think the key is to just be patient. So on the next page, they're both smooth, and this is just a line drawing I was testing out with the eraser again. It seemed to have the same problem, but not as badly. And then on this side, I decided to test out Copic markers. And I know that this is a watercolor book, so it's not really made for markers, but I wanted to just see how well it would stand up to markers and how thick the paper is. So here's the drawing. It's just a random girl that I've been just drawing random things in here, really. And you can see that it didn't really hold up that well. It kind of did, but the parts where you would go over it to fix things, or if you did a second layer of Copic, it would bleed through. And here I just wrote pros and cons, which I'll go over later. So on this side, I decided to test out another water brush pen, and it was the Color It brush pen. So on the pants is kind of like a general application of the pen without adding water, and then in the hair is where I added water, and it kind of made it almost fade, and then I tried to add in more pen when it was wet, and it didn't really work out, but I'll show you a closer look. So you can kind of see that it's faded a little bit, only because I added water. So this one does work a little bit better. So as for blending, this one does work a little bit better when it comes to blending on watercolor paper compared to the Winsor & Newton one. I think maybe because these ones are dyes compared to the Winsor & Newton one, which is actually watercolor. And then on the next page, I tested out a Sharpie gold marker because sometimes I like to add gold into my drawings. So this one is a gold marker. So on the other side, it didn't look like it bled through, but it mainly ghosted. So as you can see, it's mainly right here, or if you can see it, but it's not too bad, but it does ghost through. So if you guys are using Sharpies with this book, just be wary of that. And these are just drawings that I didn't finish yet. And on this last page, I just tested out a few watercolors from the Arteza watercolors and the Sakura Koi watercolors, just to see if it would bleed through, and it doesn't. And this is on the watercolor side. I also wanted to see how pigmented they were, and for most of these I didn't use that much water, just enough to get the color on the brush. So they hold up pretty well. I think that they look really good and really vibrant. So I think that's a good testament to the watercolor paper for watercolors, which is what it's meant to be for. So let's go over some of the pros and cons. So for the pros, I think it is a good size for traveling. It holds watercolor, ink, and watercolor pen well. It lays flat on an open seam. It has thick paper. It's a good option of textured or smooth. The watercolor does blend well with regular watercolor, not the watercolor brush pens. It is hardcover, so it's sturdy and it feels durable. And it's really just up to personal preference. So for the cons, alcohol-based markers bleed through the page. Lots of water can cause buckling of the paper, which is also normal of watercolor paper, but just something to be aware of. Heavy ink application can cause ghosting. The smooth side is difficult to erase on, which is interesting, and I don't think I've had this problem before, but the paper kind of rubs off. And sometimes pages with lots of ink can transfer to the other page, but it's erasable. So for example, on this one, I used a lot of ink over here, and the next morning some of the, I guess, ink or the residue transferred over here, but I was able to erase it. It's just something to keep in mind. So overall, I think that this is a good choice for traveling if you like to do watercolor on the go. I think it's a good size. It would fit in a purse or a small bag. And it also has the choice of watercolor paper or a smooth side. Just keep in mind that if you erase on the smooth side, then it tends to rub off the paper. But for the textured side, that is not an issue. Of course, if you're just using watercolor and no pencil and eraser, then this probably is not a problem. So that about wraps up this review video. I hope you guys found it useful and helpful. If you guys are interested, there'll be a link down below in the description, and there's also a coupon code if you guys want to use that as well. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Keep drawing, keep painting, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!